Hey guys, it's James Walsh here from the Wrestling Epicenter. I'd like to thank you for finding us here on YouTube. If you get the opportunity, please click that subscribe button as well as the notifications bell. This way, anytime that we upload any new content or new to you content from our archives dating back to 2002, you'll be notified. You can check out what we're up to. Please also check out www.wrestlingepicenter.com for all your wrestling news and information needs, as well as check out our store to keep us running free and clear. Without any further delay, let's get to why you're here. Thanks for checking out Wrestling Epicenter on YouTube. Hey guys, it's James Walsh coming to you. This is 2020, the end of 2020. Woohoo! Almost 2021. A couple years ago, I think it was back in 2018, we spoke to Bobby Cruz again. And this is the original conversation from back in 2007. It's easy to forget just how much of Ring of Honor history Bobby Cruz was both a part of and around to see. Great interview with a then youngster Bobby Cruz, who's now the grizzled veteran we spoke to a few years ago. Enjoy for you Ring of Honor purists out there.
Evening where we are honored and privileged to have as our guest Ring of Honor's ring announcer, or the ring announcer of honor, Mr. Bobby Cruz. Bobby, how are you doing today?
Chris, how are you?
We're doing excellently. First question we have for you is the one we ask most of our guests. Were you a wrestling fan growing up?
Absolutely. Grew up about 45 minutes south of Boston, and every Saturday morning, the local Boston station, Channel 56, WWF was on every Saturday morning, and I was faithfully tuned in every week.
Who were some of your favorites?
When I first started watching, I was really a big fan of Rocky Johnson. I thought he was amazing, just the way he used to move, the drop kick he used to throw, the shuffle he used to do. I can remember one of my how thrilled I was when I was a kid when he and Tony Atlas defeated the Wild Samoans for the WWF Tag Team titles. And then I got a little older towards my teenage years, big fan of Jake Roberts. Just loved watching him. And then as you get older, you appreciate his psychology and all the things he specialized in, his connection with the fans. He just made everything look so easy. So those were my two favorites really growing up, both as a child and then as a teenager.
Well, in doing my research for this interview, I happened to read in another interview that you did some announcing for your high school girls basketball team. Care to talk about that a little bit? Yeah,
that just came about kind of in a weird way. Baseball was really my specialty growing up, and then through high school. At basketball, I played the first 3 years in high school. Didn't know if I really wanted to do it my senior year. My English teacher was the head girls basketball coach, and he always knew I was into announcing and stuff. I had done some play-by-play work for the cable access station for some high school hockey games and stuff. And he said, "Well, would you want to do public address announcing for our games?" And I said, "You know what? I'll try it." So I did a couple scrimmages and stuff, and I really enjoyed it. So I did that for the remainder of high school through my senior year, and then a few years after that, just kind of like a side job. And that's really how the first public address work I ever did.
And I guess the next question I have for you is, how did you get your start in the wrestling business?
So after doing the public address work, I'd always been, when I watched wrestling growing up, and really when I became a teenager, the more I watched it, I was always into the production side of wrestling and the ring announcing and the music and stuff like that. So I said, you know what, I'm a fan of wrestling, and I like doing the public address work. Let's try and combine the two. So what I did in early '94 was I sent out some letters to a bunch of indie promotions here in New England, and just trying to get a job or a look as a ring announcer. And a few of them got back to me, and that's really how it all started.
Your first show was with New England Wrestling, I believe?
Yeah, New England Wrestling, which is based out of Fall River, Mass. They were about 15, 20 minutes from where I lived. They called me. The timing, so much of the wrestling business is timing. The timing really worked out. They were in need of a ring announcer at the time. The guy who hadn't been doing it was just a wrestler who happened to be injured. So they brought me down for one show. They gave me a couple matches to do. They called me a few days later and said, we'd like to have you do full-time ring announcing. So that's really where it started, and that was in the spring of '94.
And, how long before you hooked up with Steve Karina?
That was right towards the end of ECW. I was New England Wrestling became Yankee Pro Wrestling. This changed the company name, and I was doing the booking at the time, and we were looking for some different names to bring in. And I came across Steve Karina, so I talked to Steve about coming up with some shows for Yankee Pro Wrestling. He did come up, and that was the first time I dealt with him, was when on those shows. Very easy to deal with, always put in 100%. So we kind of hit it off, both business-wise and friends, as far as friends right away.
And was Mr. Carino involved with you getting to Japan with PWF? No.
Absolutely. He was.
I apologize. 01.
Right. Yeah, it was through the PWF, and he was a huge reason. The shows that he appeared up here for Yankee Pro Wrestling, I was not only booking him, but I was also ring announcing most of them. So he got to see and hear me as a ring announcer, and he liked the work I was doing. So he asked me to go down every so often for the PWF down in Pennsylvania, which eventually turned into a full-time job down there as well. And there was a show called Vast Energy, where it was Carino and C.W. Anderson against Shinjiro Otani and Masato Tanaka. And Mr. Nakamura, who's the general manager for 01, happened to be at that event. And at that time, 01 was looking into doing a pay-per-view in the States. It was actually going to be in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, at the convention center. It ended up obviously never happening. But after the show, Steve came up to me and he said, Mr. Nakamura was impressed with the work he did. They had already spoke to someone else about ring announcing for their pay-per-view here in the States, but they wanted to know if I would be interested in doing the backstage interviews. And I said, absolutely. I would say a few weeks later, it was Thanksgiving morning, I got an email from Steve saying 01's going to do 2 U.S.-themed shows in Japan, and they've requested you to go over and do the ring announcing. Would you be interested? And I said, absolutely. So that's how it started. I was spotted totally through PWF and Steve Karino, and it really worked out. I got to do 2 tours and a couple pay-per-views with 01.
Now, Bret Hart said in a very famous interview that he loved everything about Japan except the food. We also interviewed C.W. Anderson, who has his own opinions about the Japanese cuisine. What can you tell us about your experiences with the food over there?
It's kind of touchy because I'm a very picky eater to begin with. I'll be totally honest, I eat a lot of junk food. I eat, things that, for example, my breakfast some mornings is a Hostess cupcakes or something like that. So the first time I went over, it's a big adjustment. The good part about it is when you're in Tokyo, it's so Americanized over there. So you have a TGI Fridays, you have a Wendy's, you have a Denny's for breakfast. McDonald's is everywhere. So it's really not that big of a deal. When you have to go to a place, a Japanese restaurant, that's where it turns a little fishy sometimes. The first night I spent in Tokyo, I was out to dinner with Steve, his son Colby, and C.W. Anderson. And of course, with Steve and C.W. being veterans of Japan, I totally put myself in their hands when it came to what we had to eat that first night. So Steve said, we'll get some meat and we'll get some rice. And so, oh yeah, I'm fine. Just give me a soda and stuff. I'll be all set. So the food comes, and it's one of these Japanese places where you cook the meat yourself. They bring it uncooked. There's a grill basically right in the center of the table, and you cook it yourself to how you want it cooked. So Steve's handling all the cooking. He's the chef here, and he puts a few pieces of meat on my plate. So I take a bite of the first one, and I'm like, it was good, but it was really, really chewy. And I said to him, what is this anyway? And he said, oh, it's cow's tongue. Now I'm thinking to myself, I would never. Someone said, you want to try his cow's tongue? I would never, ever do it. But since I was eating it, I didn't know what it was. It wasn't that big of a deal. It's one of those things where you just kind of have to go over there with an open mind and say, you know what, I'm going to try this. And if you're going to kind of be stubborn about it, just like I said, there's plenty of American-type restaurants over there. There's a lot of ramen places. Everyone buys these ramen noodles in the supermarket. Just more of a high-end kind of noodles and soup over there. So I've never really found it to be an issue in the 3 tours I've done over there. But I could see how certain people would just kind of be miserable with the food they have to choose from.
Okay. And we've heard some pretty amazing stories about Steve Karina in Japan, especially from CW. Do you have one that you can share with us without getting him into real trouble?
A real Steve Karina story. You know what? He, I've heard a lot of the stories too. Mm-hmm. He's always carried himself differently when he's around me. And I don't know. I've never seen him do something that I would think people would think was funny. You know what I mean? He's a funny guy, has a great sense of humor, but I'm sure some of the stories CW would have told you or did tell you would have been a lot better than anything I would have. He's the best thing about Steve Karina that I've always felt is just his sense of humor. From joking about his own performance in the ring to joking about baseball or whatever. He's a big baseball fan. We have arguments. We go have arguments about baseball all the time. Just kind of conversing back and forth with him. And he's just one of those guys that will just come out with some random one-liner that is just something you wouldn't even think of, but it's funny beyond belief. And, those are my best memories of hanging out with Steve. I don't think I've ever seen him do something that, I would consider even, over the line or anything like that.
All right. Well, you mentioned baseball, and I have to ask, when the Red Sox won the World Series in 2004, how much did you celebrate?
I'll tell you, and this may not be believable, seeing as I'm from Massachusetts, I did not celebrate a huge amount. Now, everyone always said when the Red Sox finally win the World Series, the party would go on until the next season started. I'm a big baseball fan, and while I enjoy the Red Sox and I love going to Fenway Park, there's nothing better than a summer night at Fenway Park watching a game. I'm not a huge Red Sox fan. I'm a big baseball fan. My childhood, there's a guy named Dwight Evans who was the right fielder for the Red Sox, who I thought was God. That was my idol growing up. And when he left the Red Sox after the 1990 season, that kind of soured me on the Red Sox, because even though I was a lot younger and I didn't realize it was a business at that point, I didn't like the way that was handled, and I was really bothered by that. So I kind of went anti-Red Sox for a little bit. But I'm a big baseball fan. I have have DirecTV. I've had that extra innings package for the past 10 years. So I just scan around and watch game after game from night to night. But it was definitely a celebration. There's no doubt about that. But I'm sure a lot more real Red Sox fans had a much better, enjoyed it a lot more than I did.
All right. Well, thanks for being honest with us. I guess the final Japan question I have is a lot of wrestlers we ask who have gone to Japan say that the Japanese audience is very different from the American audience. That they're more respectful and they appreciate the athleticism of it. I would assume. What were your impressions of the Japanese audience?
Yeah, it's definitely different. I don't know. I've heard that same thing. Guys that have gone over there say that fans are more respectful. I don't think I would choose more respectful as the term I would use, because we get spoiled, especially with Ring of Honor, having some of the greatest fans in the world, and very appreciative. Whether we're here in the States or when we've gone to the UK, like I said, just the response Ring of Honor gets from the fans is amazing. And I don't think fans are more respectful in Japan. I just think they just have a different way of showing their appreciation. It's very, very quiet during matches. When something big is coming, some big maneuver or something, you can kind of hear the anticipation. All the Japanese fans kind of do like a roar, and then when the actual move hits, that's when they kind of come out loud. So I think the big difference is that they're just quieter during matches, and they kind of pick their spots to show a response. If anyone says they're more respectful, it's more in the way that you're not going to hear some of the things that you hear here. As far as, if a bad guy is doing something or he's on his way to the ring here in the States, you might hear someone yell something about the guy's mother or whatever. But you're definitely not going to hear that in Japan. That's, I think, what guys talk about more respect. None of that is in Japan. You never hear a bad comment from Japanese fans. Now, maybe I've heard it and it's been in Japanese. I haven't understood it, so it didn't click with me. But I've never just seen that reaction from Japanese fans kind of going after anybody or anything like that. The fans here in the States, some of them try to be more confrontational with guys and try to, get themselves noticed. That's the huge difference that you would never see in Japan.
Right, well, if I start skipping around with Ring of Honor, because that's the next list of questions, I do apologize.
No problem.
I haven't been following Ring of Honor since, I've been following Ring of Honor closely since WrestleMania of last year, the Supercard of Honor. So if I just start skipping around, I'm not doing it on purpose. Back in 2006, you had a little spiel with Bryan Danielson where he forced you to say some really awful things to the crowds. Were those arranged beforehand, or were they improvised?
No, matter of fact, Bryan hit me with another one last week in New York City at the Manhattan Center show. Mm-hmm. It was his first weekend back with Ring of Honor. Those are totally random things. I never know what's coming. I never know what he's going to ask me to say or actually demand me to say. It's kind of just one of those things. And some of the things you can probably tell if you ever watch. You can tell by my reaction. I'm really not thrilled with saying them. A lot of them have to do with insulting fans that are sitting there that paid tickets to get in there. But no, that's all Bryan Danielson on his own. Like I said, he hit me with one last week, where I was introducing him and he came up and cut me off and said, to tell everyone that he was still the best wrestler in the world. So he wanted to make sure everyone knew that. So, it's very random and it's all Bryan. And sometimes he comes up with things that I don't even know if I should say, but I really don't have a choice.
Has anyone ever confronted you about that?
No one's ever said anything. Usually the things that he has me say are fairly humorous. I'm just trying to think of one that I kind of hesitated on and didn't know if I really wanted to say, and I can't think of a particular one offhand. I do know that he's caught me off guard a couple times where he will come up and tell me to say something, and I will kind of say to him, "Do you really want me to say that?" And there's no doubt, so I've got to say it. But no, I've never heard any complaints from anyone about that.
Okay. Also, during this time, Jimmy Rave was getting mercilessly taped toilet paper, and some of those, and it seemed that sometimes there were people throwing toilet paper at you rather than Jimmy. Was that the case?
It was probably Jimmy himself doing that.
No, I mean I've seen a couple of stray rolls whiz by your head a couple of times. Yeah. I'm no doubt an easy target, and me, whoever the referee would be back then for Jimmy's particular matches. We're kind of just standing there. We're sitting ducks basically. And I do know that Jimmy has taken quite a few shots at me, and not only in the head, so to speak. He's also, tried to go into different regions with a shot of toilet paper from across the ring. Mm-hmm. That toilet paper thing was a phenomenon, and I really saw the power that it had last year in Japan. We were doing a 5-day tour with Dragon Gate for their Wrestle Jam shows. And the fans in Japan, all 5 days, were throwing toilet paper at Jimmy Rave when he entered the ring. And I said, you know what? Wow, this is a big thing. And I'm not sure how it started, when it started, but it was probably one of the more entertaining things, and definitely as far as ring entrances, that we've seen in Ring of Honor. It's kind of, it's still even today, it's different to see Jimmy Rave get in the ring and not see a stray roll of toilet paper come flying at his head. Yeah. Who put a stop to it?
Ring of Honor put a stop to it because Jimmy's persona has changed this year. With the embassy going away, it is a new Jimmy Rave. It's a lot more serious Jimmy Rave. Jimmy Rave in the embassy was taken seriously, but he was also more of a gimmick, with the embassy and the robe and all that, and his manager at the time. So it just was more of a comical thing at times. The Jimmy Rave of 2007 in Ring of Honor was extremely serious, and I don't think it would fit, and I think it was a good idea to get rid of it. I just don't see Jimmy Rave coming to the ring right now the way Jimmy Rave is as a character, as a wrestler, and seeing the toilet paper fitting in. I think it's much better the way it is now.
Okay. Well, you've been with Ring of Honor since 2003, so if we could list a few of the champions and some of the more favorite moments, and you can give me your opinion on them.
Sure.
So sort of a mini word association, but we got a bigger one at the end. Samoa Joe. He's left Ring of Honor. What are your thoughts? What were your thoughts at the time of his 21-month title reign? And I guess the other question is, who do you think will fill that void that he will leave?
Well, the first question, I first met Joe doing the PWF shows down for Carino. And the Samoa Joe that I saw down there was a lot different than the Samoa Joe I saw in Ring of Honor. Samoa Joe became an absolute wrestling machine. When I first met him in the PWF, there was a lot of submission, which he still did in Ring of Honor, still does today, but it was a lot more mat stuff. And then Samoa Joe I saw in Ring of Honor was a lot of high impact, whether it was a muscle buster or, different slams or suplexes or strikes, the kicks. It was a much different Samoa Joe, and it improved greatly. I started with Ring of Honor full-time in October of 2004, and so I caught kind of the tail end of his title run. I started with him in 2003 doing the Carino intros. And, Samoa Joe, to me, for a long time, was Ring of Honor. I'd always said there were really three icons in Ring of Honor: Joe, CM Punk, and Homicide. And Samoa Joe really helped make Ring of Honor into what Ring of Honor is, and in turn, Ring of Honor helped make Samoa Joe into what he is. I think it was great, just great timing for both the company and for Samoa Joe. The guy is an incredible athlete. The things he would do for a big guy sometimes, I would just be amazed at. Things I had never seen him do before. I would just kind of sit there with my jaw would drop. And I always enjoy watching Samoa Joe, whether he was in a 10 or 15-minute match, he was in his 60-minute draws. Samoa Joe was an amazing performer in the ring, and he also had something that can not be taught, is that connection with the fans, especially the Ring of Honor fans. The connection he had with them is just indescribable. It was a mutual adoration. He loved going out and dealing with Ring of Honor fans. Of course, they loved watching him. As far as who's going to pick up the slack, that's the question these days in Ring of Honor. I mean, there is a huge opportunity for a lot of guys in the locker room, whether it's Nigel McGuinness, whether it's Jimmy Rave, whether it's Roderick Strong, Davey Richards. The ball is in anybody's court right now, and somebody's going to grab it. Now, whether it's one guy, whether it's two guys or three guys, remains to be seen. But with the departures that have happened lately in Ring of Honor, there are some opportunities here for some guys to really, really make an impact and build a legacy for themselves. It's going to be very interesting next 6 months, I would say, to see who takes advantage of that.
Absolutely. Well, if you were a betting man, who would you because you're there in every show. I mean, judging by the crowd's reactions, who do you see as the not as the next Samoa Joe, but as the next big star of Ring of Honor?
If he's not already a big star now, which I think he is, especially after our first set of UK shows, I think Nigel McGuinness has the best opportunity. I think those two UK shows last August for us really put Nigel on the map. Now, he had the Pure Wrestling title. He actually beat Joe for that title. So he's already a big-time player in Ring of Honor. I just think he took another 2 or 3 steps up the ladder. And I think he may continue to do that. I think Nigel really has the advantage right now to be that next huge guy in ROH.
How about someone who had a few matches with Samoa Joe that some say made Ring of Honor mainstream? Certainly got my attention. CM Punk.
Yeah, that CM Punk's departure from Ring of Honor. That was the first departure that really kind of hit me and bothered me a bit. You're happy for him because he's going on to do what he wants to do, but Samoa Joe, CM Punk, and Homicide, as I said, were the 3 icons of Ring of Honor. And you could say, out of any of those 3 names, they were Ring of Honor, not just one guy. And CM Punk was definitely Ring of Honor. CM Punk, grew up in the Midwest, did the indies there, and he worked his way up. He did it the way he was supposed to. And he became noticed, and he got shots with Ring of Honor. When I first started doing the Carino intros, he was doing a feud with Raven at the time. And that was when you realized that CM Punk was going to be a big-time player. And, just another guy that just worked his ass off constantly, in the ring, out of the ring. The matches he had with Joe that you alluded to, were just wars. And, 60 minutes here, 60 minutes there. And he reminds me, I mentioned earlier about how I like Jake Roberts when I was younger. He reminds me so much of a Jake Roberts just because of his natural smart and his natural psychology. That's why no matter where CM Punk ends up, he's going to be a big time player wherever he is, as long as he's wrestling, because he just has that mind for the business, and he knows what's good, he knows what's not good, he knows what's going to work and what's not going to work. I just have all the respect in the world for CM Punk. I just think, if things continue to go well for him, I'll be happier than I would be, for anyone, because he deserves it.
How about one of CM Punk's closest friends and one of my favorite wrestlers? He just signed a WWE contract. How about Colt Cabana?
Yeah, there's another one. I was joking with Cabana. We had a show in Long Island in the middle of April after, we found out that he was going to WWE with the developmental deal, and I was joking to him. I was, any wrestler wants to get signed by WWE, they should move to Chicago, because they were on such a tear. Justin Roberts years ago, the ECW ring announcer, being from Chicago, and then of course Punk, and then Ace Steel, and now Cabana. Like, the Chicago area is the breeding ground if you want to go to WWE. Colt Cabana is easily, in my 13 plus years in the business, one of the most entertaining guys I've ever seen. And he's just as entertaining out of the ring as he is in the ring. Everyone sees him in the ring. That's Colt Cabana outside the ring. He's joking, constantly joking, telling jokes. It bothers me sometimes because I read some fans that say, he's just a comedy wrestler and this and that. He can't actually wrestle. He does some of the most amazing wrestling moves I've ever seen. He's one of the best chain wrestlers I've ever seen. He comes up with some counters and some moves that I just had never seen before. And I think he's extremely underrated for his wrestling ability. Yeah, everyone sees him coming out if he's wearing the polka dots or whatever. He's dancing and he's doing all this other stuff and, entertaining in the ring. But he is easily one of the best ring technicians that I've seen in my 13 years. And I think that gets overlooked a lot of times. He was another guy, Ring of Honor for years, basically a Ring of Honor original, and I hope things work out for him.
Yeah, by the way, I absolutely 100% agree with you there. He is just as good technically as he is entertainment-wise.
No doubt.
And the last one on this micro list is one of the recent departees. Been there since day one, Homicide. Yeah,
that's. I was talking to someone when we found out that Homicide wouldn't be with Ring of Honor anymore, and that's one that really bothered me, because here's another guy who was a big time guy in Ring of Honor, had been with Ring of Honor since the beginning, a New York guy, and he never ever took a night off in all the times that I had seen him. I first started seeing him with the Carino matches in Ring of Honor, and then in the past 2.5 years when I've been with him full time. No matter what show it was, whether he was in a cage with someone, or he was going in a world title match, or he was in a four-corner survival, he never ever took a night off. When you saw Homicide was on a lineup, you knew you were going to see Homicide. You weren't going to see half of Homicide or 3/4 of Homicide. You were going to see Homicide. And that's the thing I respect about him, is the guy, no matter what, never ever took a night off. Great guy to have around the locker room. Kind of a quiet leader. Joe was much the same. They're locker room leaders, but they're not the out, yelling and screaming out there. They're kind of the quiet, lead by example, and lead out in the, by example out in the ring type of leaders. And, like I said, that we found out a couple of weeks ago about him having to leave Ring of Honor. That one bothered me because of those reasons.
Well, speaking of which, a lot of the TNA contractees have left Ring of Honor. Chris Sabin, Homicide, Chris Daniels, Alex Shelley, and Samoa Joe. What has the mood been like backstage with the departure of such big talent?
I think those guys are missed as people, because they're all great guys. Obviously guys like Sabin and Shelley hadn't been around Ring of Honor for a while, but when you take Joe and Homicide and Daniels, all three locker room leaders, all three very good guys to have around, whether it was for advice or just to talk and, go over things with. I think as far as the other wrestlers and myself, just you respected those guys. And you still do. As far as out in the ring, I think the mood amongst the guys is, well, here's opportunity. Doors have opened, okay? Samoa Joe is no longer a Ring of Honor. That's a big door that opened. Christopher Daniels is no longer. That's a big door that is open. Now Homicide, there's another door that's open. Somebody's got to step in these open doors. And I think there's a lot of excitement about the opportunity that is there for guys. And I think they're very excited to try to jump in. If 3 doors are open, that doesn't mean that 6 or 7 guys can move up to those spots. So it's going to be a competition. And like I said, that's why I think the next 6 months or so in Ring of Honor is going to be very interesting and very exciting, because guys are fighting for roster spots. Not necessarily if they're already on the roster to stay on the roster, but to move up on the roster. And everyone, no matter what, whether it's Samoa Joe's best friend or Homicide's best friend or whatever, they're now gone. Guys want to move up. It's a natural thing. We're human. If Ring of Honor had another ring announcer, I would want to be the number 1 ring announcer, not the number 2. And guys are going to want to step up to these spots. And it's going to be interesting to see who does it.
Absolutely. Well, Ring of Honor is going to pay-per-view. First off, what are your thoughts about it?
I think it's a very exciting time for Ring of Honor. For a long time, people have wondered when Ring of Honor would be on television. And I think this is the smartest way for the company to do it. I think pursuing a network TV deal, national TV deal, would have been very risky for the business of Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor is a phenomenon, in my opinion. It's amazing that the company has basically flourished and grown and gone international through live events and through the internet and through DVD sales without any television. For a while now, we've had a weekly TV show in Canada, in the UK, and Ireland. But, as far as the States, there's no TV outlet. And to see the company continue to grow at the pace it has, I think has been amazing. So I think this is a very good thing for Ring of Honor. It was something that was looked into. I think this is the best way to go into it. I don't think, like I said, I don't think a TV deal really would have fit at this time. So, hopefully it works. Hopefully for everyone in Ring of Honor it works, and the fans as well. Ring of Honor has been considered unofficially one of the top 3 companies in the country. And now, befitting of that is a deal where Ring of Honor will be on television. So,
okay, well, you also mentioned the television show. We have to ask. Some of our forum members in England know that you host the Wrestling Channel's Ring of Honor television show.
Right.
Was it first of all, how'd you get the gig, and was it a difficult transition for you to go from ring announcing to hosting the show?
I don't remember how I got the gig. I think they just asked me to do it. I think it was just really as simple as that. It hasn't been a hard transition because in the past, ring announcing has really been what I've done the most, but I've also done some play-by-play work, and I've done some hosting stuff for the independents that I worked for. So it really wasn't a huge deal as far as a transition for me, and it wasn't difficult. It can be a little tedious. When we usually do them, we usually take 4 to 6 weeks worth at a time. And I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over. And I try to be original, trying to be fresh, because I don't want someone if someone's watching it on TWC Fight in the UK to be hearing the same thing over and over. The only thing I'm saying differently is the matches are on that week's episode. But I think, the show seems to be doing well. I did catch part of one when we were over in the UK last August. I like TWC Fight. I thought it was, I think it's a great channel. I have never seen the Fight Network. But I enjoy doing those, and I think they're a very good outlet for Ring of Honor. Kind of get the word out a little bit.
All right. Well, before we get to some, never mind that. I'll edit that out. Forgive me. October 27, 2006. You did some re-announcing for WWE Heat.
Yeah.
First off, what was it like announcing in that quote-unquote most sacred of all wrestling rings?
Well, I read somewhere online that the first appearance I did for them was in October. It was actually in September. I don't know. I must have gotten overlooked on that one. But the first one I did was in September in Oklahoma City, and then the next one I did was that October one in Chicago. It was definitely a good feeling to get the call. Most people that are in the wrestling business, that's their goal. Everyone wants to be at the pinnacle. No one wants to, be in the minor leagues or whatever you want to call the independents their whole life, And for a long time, I gave up on that because I had a couple young girls, and I said, you know what, I'm not even going to pursue this. I don't want to be on the road all these days if it works out with two young girls. Well, they've got a little older now, and getting the call from WWE last September was definitely good. It kind of made it feel like things paid off a little bit. Somebody took notice, and it was a very good feeling to get that call. And I was very happy with the way things went, especially, you can hear my dog going crazy, especially that first night in Oklahoma City. I was really happy with how things went.
Well, were the WWE agents, kind to you?
Oh, absolutely. Everyone was there. It was great to deal with. I didn't deal with them so much. I basically dealt with the TV production office. And from the first call that I got to all the emails back and forth, the phone calls back and forth, and then the people I dealt with at the arena, everyone was extremely professional, as you would expect, and everyone was great to deal with. No one was, difficult with me or anything. I think everyone was tried to be as helpful as they could, and I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the people that I met there. It was really a good time.
What kind of advice did you get?
Basically to keep things simple, not to be too fancy. I was told basically the worst thing you could do is go out there and jumble a word or a name or screw something up, basically. Just not to be too fancy. The Ring of Honor names I'm very comfortable with and everything, so I have my own way of announcing each different guy. Basically with WWE, I try to keep it as simple as possible, not get too fancy. The other reason I want to do that is I didn't want to look like I was trying to, upstage anyone. I didn't want to look like, I was trying to be too over the top, because that's not me. I know what a ring announcer's role is, to just kind of fit in. You have your own little spot there. So that was really the advice, was just not to be too over the top.
Well, you just mentioned my next question, so I'll ask it right now. Which names and gimmicks have been the hardest for you to pronounce, at least the first time?
I have the first two tours I did. Well, the two tours I did for 01 there's a guy by the name of Tatsuhito Takaiwa. Now, some people say Takaiwa. I was told to say Takaiwa. For some reason, that name haunted me both times I was over there for 01. I think one time in a pay-per-view it came out Tatsuhito instead of Tatsuhito. That name has been probably the one that has been the most difficult for me. That's the one that sticks out. And I remember it was a solid year in between doing pay-per-views for 01. And I told myself the second time, don't say Tatsuhito, and it still came out that way. So, that name haunts me. That's the one name that haunts me.
Were there any American or North American names that haunt you?
No, I don't think so. I think, they're pretty easy. The thing with me is when I'm announcing someone for the first or second time, it's a pretty basic intro that you'll hear. And then, the guys that are in Ring of Honor and have been for a while, I have my different way of announcing people, such as Jimmy Rave, is kind of like the evil punk kid that from high school, kind of, that just they kind of wanted to slap in the face. So the way I announce him is very, very, with a lot of bass and very low and very slowly, kind of. And then obviously if some, big fan favorite, you're not going to announce them the same way. So, I think that's one thing I do well, is kind of just change up the way I introduce people, kind of to fit fit their, who they are, basically.
Is that something you do naturally, or are there some wrestlers who ask you to to announce them a certain way?
No, and as far as Ring of Honor goes, I've never had anyone ask me to announce them a certain way. Back when I first started, kind of the less professional places around New England, you would have guys, I want to be introduced this way, I want to be introduced that way. You just start in the business, you go along with it, whether it made sense or not. But, no, I've never, especially in recent years, I've never heard anyone say, I'd like to be introduced differently or anything like that.
All right. This is a question we ask everybody who works on the independents. You don't have to give a specific answer, but how do you support your wrestling habit?
How do I support my wrestling habit?
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. I don't know that I have a wrestling habit anymore. I certainly used to, as far as watching it and stuff like that. I think being in the business and announcing as long as I have, I don't know that I have a wrestling habit. And to be honest, I don't know how much more time I have in the wrestling business. I was very close the summer of last year, summer of 2006, to informing Ring of Honor that the end of 2006 was going to be it for me. I was going to retire, basically. It was going to allow me to spend more time at home, obviously, and stuff like that. And I'm fortunate, I'm not like the wrestlers where they're traveling everywhere, working for different promotions and that's their income. I have a quote unquote real job where, I could walk away from announcing or walk away from wrestling. The thing with WWE happened in September and it obviously changed the outlook. If I would have went to work there, then, obviously I wasn't going to retire and call it quits at the end of last year. So, and then when I ended up staying with Ring of Honor, I kind of said, you know what, I'm still going to do this. I don't have a set time in my head right now as I did last year that, I'd like to stop at this point. But who knows, next week or the week after I may. I go back and forth. I fight with myself all the time about this. And my older daughter's going to be 8 in a few weeks. And I told her last year, I said, well, this is going to be my last summer. Well, here we are. We're almost a summer later now, and I'm still doing it. So, it's a habit in the way that it gets in your blood, and you're programmed into the business. As an announcer, I enjoy going out there and announcing, especially for Ring of Honor fans who, unlike any fans I've ever seen or heard. And the hard part for me too is the guys in the locker room. Such a great group of guys in the locker room, and it's kind of hard. Hey, if I stop, I'm not going to talk to these guys, and I'm not going to see these guys anymore. So that's the hard part for me. But I'm not tuned in 5 hours a week to TV watching wrestling or anything like that. So I don't know if I would say I have a habit right now. I think my habit is just the announcing and going out there and performing, basically.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for your honesty with the answer, and I guess the two more questions before I get to the real word associations.
Yep.
The Ring of Honor fans.
Yeah.
We have a few on our forums, and they're very nice people, and they're very, very devoted to Ring of Honor. Some I've met have been almost fanatically so. Is that your take on them? And I guess the other question is, what do you think of such loyalty to Ring of Honor?
Loyalty is the word. I've never seen such loyal fans before, ever, in anywhere. It includes Japan. I don't know. I think what I attribute it to is the fans appreciate just what they see in the ring. There's backstage promos and stuff like that, but Ring of Honor is really about what takes place in the ring. And I think the fans have seen since Ring of Honor started, and it's just grown, the effort that all these guys are putting out there. And, with the stuff that's on television, this is no knock on them, believe me, they don't have the time on their television shows to give matches 20, 25, 45 minutes. There's too many guys to get on particular TV shows. So I think that's what these fans notice from Ring of Honor, is the effort that is put out there, the sacrifices that the wrestlers make in the ring and their bodies. And I just think word of mouth has helped. And like I said, the loyalty, that's the key word. If someone said to me, choose one word to describe Ring of Honor fans, it would be loyal. The second one would be passionate, because they are passionate about what they see in the ring. And Ring of Honor fans are absolutely amazing. And I was so happy to see when we went to the UK for the first time last August. It was almost as if we were in New York City, because the fans were just as knowledgeable and just as passionate about what they were seeing in the ring.
Absolutely. Well, what can you tell us about the Bean benefit?
Bean benefit, yes. An unfortunate situation. A woman from Franklin, Mass. Her name is Debbie Bean, who basically came down with an illness and had her both legs and both arms amputated. There is a person behind that show. His name is Gino Giovanni, who I've known for years. He's an independent wrestler out of Rhode Island. I've probably known him for about 10 years. One of my best friends in the business. He is very close with the family. And he, mentioned a few months ago that he wanted to do a benefit wrestling event with 100% of the proceeds going to Debbie Bean. Insurance covers some things, but it doesn't cover everything. And obviously with the operations and things she's had to go through, the medical bills have stacked up. So he has organized it with help from the family, but he's done a lot of the legwork. An event that's going to take place on June 10th in Franklin, Mass. At the high school, where all of the wrestlers are donating their time. Nobody's taking a payday. And hopefully we get a good turnout. I would certainly hope so we can raise some money. Gino just found out that she will be able to actually attend the event, which was a little iffy there for a while because of her health. But this has always been something that I've tried to get involved in. I was involved in a fundraiser for a young boy with cancer a few years ago, that was able to raise a good amount of money for him. We're very fortunate to have our health, to have healthy children, or whatever the situation may be. When something like this comes up and you're in the wrestling business, or you can do a benefit softball game or whatever you can do, I would jump at the opportunity anytime. So hopefully things go well. If anyone wants to check it out, they can go to beanbenefit.com, and there's an address on there to just send in some donations. Like I said, it's right on there. 100% of the proceeds go to help her in her battle. So I think anything anyone can do would definitely be appreciated.
All right. Well, we will get the word out with this show, and hopefully with everything else, and if we could conclude with some word associations. Basically, if you only have a one-word response, that's fine. If you have a story you want to share, feel free.
You've heard me talk this whole time. One word's hard for me. I'm a professional talker, so we'll see. Okay.
Well, I just hope I haven't ruined your voice. The first one is someone we interviewed back in December and had nothing but praise for you when we mentioned your name. How about Joey Eastman?
See, I can't go one word. All right. Well,
you can go as long as you want. That's fine.
I'll go as few words as I can. Joey Eastman, I've never met Joey Eastman. I'm looking forward to it. I'd like to meet him sometime. I'm hoping he would come hang out at a Ring of Honor show in Chicago sometime or something. I've heard nothing but good things about Joey Eastman from Dave Prazak and other people. I know he does the ring announcing for Shimmer, of course, that's one of our sister promotions of Ring of Honor. Like I said, I've heard nothing but good things, and I hope to meet him someday.
All right. How about former WCW announcer Dave Penzer?
Interesting. Dave Penzer, another one I've never met. Dave Penzer. Interesting. Let me see if I can come up with something to Dave Penzer. Kind of difficult. I'm not, I of course know Dave Penzer like a lot of people from his WCW work. I know he works at TNA, but I don't watch TNA, so I don't know if he still sounds the same or still doing the same. I guess the one word I would have, not knowing him and just, going by what I used to watch, is professional. How's that?
That's perfectly okay. How about ECW ring announcer Justin Roberts?
Justin, I met him for the first time when I did the WWE stuff last fall. Really nice guy. Got his head on his shoulders. Obviously doing things right there. He's been there for a few years now. And I was really happy to see when they made the ECW brand that there's some rumors of who was going to get the ring announcing gig and so forth. I was really happy to see him basically get his quote own show, and I think he's done very well. And obviously you see him doing Raw lately. You see him on SmackDown filling in for Tony Schimmel. So he's 26, 27-year-old. He's got a huge future. He could be there for the next 20 years. So hope it goes well.
And how about SmackDown's ring announcer, Tony Schimmel?
Tony's another one I met for the first time last fall when I was there. He is easily one of the funniest people I've ever met in the wrestling business, probably in life in general. He's been there 20-something years. Nothing bothers him. But when we go out there, to start a show, he's extremely professional. And he looks like he's in control out there. He's standing in the ring, you could hear him. He's so comfortable because he's been doing it for so long. He just looks like he's in control, and he looks like he still belongs out there. And I really loved hanging around Tony those few days. He was a blast.
And Raw's ring announcer, Lillian Garcia.
Lillian was awesome to deal with. She was very helpful. She was the first announcer that I dealt with that first day in Oklahoma City. Anything to help. She would do anything she could to help me, whether it was info for guys or the way heat was going to be announced, and whether it was a live cut-in for the USA Network, whatever. Any questions I had, extremely helpful. I would go back and double check with her on something, and she was more than happy to help. And I've stayed in contact with her a little bit through email since that time. She's always asking how things are going and stuff. So she was just great to deal with.
All right, three more, probably the big three names. First one is Michael Buffer. Michael Buffer is Michael Buffer. If I could ever do 1/10 of what Michael Buffer has done, because here's a guy who does every major main event boxing match in the world, and that phrase that he came up with, because I don't think I can say it. I think he has it copyrighted. Is a phenomenon. It has made him a ton of money. It has had him do boxing. He's announced it before Pro Bowl to the NFL. I mean, it's just everywhere. You hear it at baseball stadiums or basketball arenas or whatever, played over the loudspeakers on tape. That saying is incredible. I would never be smart enough to even come up with something simple like that. But the great voice, obviously, and he's definitely on the boxing side. He is the guy for ring announcers. And someone you work with for Ring of Honor, Gary Michael Capetta.
Yeah, Gary Michael Capetta. I of course saw him when I was younger. I used to do the Philadelphia Spectrum, so I used to see him on Tuesday Night Titans when they would show matches of primetime wrestling or whatever it was at that time. Guy who I have a good amount of respect for. When I first started with Ring of Honor, he would give me input. I would ask him, hey, how did this look? How did this sound? Because Ring of Honor is kind of, with the production they do, with the lighting and everything, it's kind of unlike anything I've ever done before. But very, very helpful, very positive. If he saw something he didn't think was good or heard something he didn't think was good, he would certainly be honest with you and pass it along. But he would also give you some praise on the things that he did like. And I was so fortunate to have him around when I started with Ring of Honor, when he was doing the backstage interviews for these close shows, because I had a guy there with 20 years of ring announcing experience, both in WWF and WCW, right there as a guy standing next to me that I could bounce things off of. So I was kind of spoiled in that way.
What kind of advice has he given to you?
Basically, kind of like things that you would really never think of. That, as a ring announcer, you're really, you're out there. You're the first guy out there. And I always looked at that. You're the first guy out there, kind of representing the company. So you're the first impression. If fans have never been to a particular show and they're seeing you, you can kind of turn them on or off by the way you are dressed, by the way you act, by the way you word things, and also kind of like the flow, keeping the flow of the show going. A big thing he would say, because I always had done, when a a match would leave the ring, when the last wrestler in a match would leave the ring and go to the back with the referee or whatever, I would kind of just sit at the table until the next referee came out. Well, during that whole time, nothing's going on. The ring's empty. People kind of just sitting there. And it just keeps a little bit of a better flow. All right, when the guys clear out and they're in the back, there's nobody there, you get up as a ring announcer. You get up into the ring, and the referee comes after. So there's always constant little movement, just making the flow of a show kind of go smoother, basically.
Okay. And the last name I have on my list is the big one, the Fink, Mr. Howard Finkel. Yeah,
definitely the best ring announcer I've ever seen in my life. Just the consummate professional. Whether I was a kid going to shows or watching him on pay-per-views or TVs or whatever, I learned so much just from observing him. Like I said, when I grew up, I was always big into the ring announcing and the production, the music and stuff. So I would really watch him and, just things that he would do in a professional way. And obviously the way he would announce people. I mean, there's no other Howard Finkel out there in the wrestling business. He's just been the guy. I remember going to a TV taping years ago when I was younger, and he was getting into the ring, and a little kid had his hand held out, sitting in the front row, and Howard Finkel, went by and slapped his hand. So then he announced the match. It was a TV tape. It's Superstars, I believe. He announced the match. He jumps out of the ring, and another kid put his hand out, and he walked by. He didn't slap his hand. And I remember thinking when I was younger, I'm like, why would he do that? That's not right. But then as you get in the business and you're a ring announcer, I know exactly why he did that. When he did it to the first kid, there was nothing, he wasn't on camera. There was nothing being taped. It was basically quote unquote dark at that point. But when after he announced the match, the cameras are rolling. And how would it look if a ring announcer is walking back to his table and he walks by and slaps the kid's hand while the guys are in the ring? So it's like little things like that I would watch him as far as his professionalism and how he carried himself. Somebody just asked me last week in the Manhattan Center, who taught you, who trained you to be a ring announcer? And I said, you know what? I taught myself, but it was only because of watching Howard Finkel. And, I don't think there'll be another Howard Finkel, as far as I'm concerned. Just the years he's been there and just think of all the events he's called. It's amazing. And, a funny little story, last Saturday, we were staying in Stamford, Connecticut on Friday night after the Hartford show. And we were staying at Marriott. And the next morning we were leaving, headed down to the Manhattan Center for the pay-per-view. And we were driving out. I wasn't driving, but we were driving out, and I saw a guy who was carrying a couple bags. And I said, well, it looks like Howard Finkel. And the person sitting behind me said, that is. And I looked. I said, Jesus, it is. It was Howard Finkel. And I said, well, how ironic is that we are here on our way to the Manhattan Center to announce a pay-per-view, and right there is Howard Finkel. It was just, the irony was a little weird.
I have to ask, did you have a chance to meet him when you were doing the Heat tapings?
No, he wasn't there. He was not. The 4 days I did the TVs with them, he was not there at any of them. And I was definitely disappointed, just to say, thank you, basically, for being the announcer that he was and making me become the announcer that I wanted to be. That's basically what I would say was thank you, because, he was definitely, his announcing style, the way he carried himself, like I said, was an inspiration in the way I built myself as an announcer.
All right, well, Bobby Cruz is Ring of Honor's ring announcer. He's also the host of ROH TV for the Wrestling Channel in the UK. You can find him on MySpace at www.myspace.com/Bobby Cruz. Bobby, thank you for a wonderful interview. And you have any final words for us?
No, it's my pleasure. I appreciate the time, and anytime anyone wants to talk to a lowly ring announcer, I'm up for it. Believe me. And like I said, you mentioned my MySpace. It is spelled as a cruise ship, C-R-U-I-S-E. People often make that mistake with C-R-U-Z. Come by, say hi, add me, whatever. I'm always adding wrestling fans, and just be sure to keep up to date with Ring of Honor, all the big news of pay-per-views or upcoming news at ROHWrestling.com, and also free content at ROHvideos.com.
Absolutely. And one final word, you can find information about the Debbie Bean benefit at beanbenefit.com.
Yeah.
And once again, this is 3 Count Wrestling's main event with Bobby Cruz.
My name is James Walsh, and I'd like to thank you for checking out the Wrestling Epicenter here on YouTube. If you have not done so already, please do click that subscription button and the notifications bell. This way you'll be notified anytime I upload any new or new to you classic content from our archives that date back to 2002. If you get the opportunity, please also check out www.wrestlingepicenter.com for all your wrestling news and info needs, as well as our store to keep us going free and clear. Without any further delay, let's get to why you came here, the content here on YouTube.